As I settled into my seat in the conference room, the familiar weight of dread slipped onto my shoulders. My colleagues buzzed with excitement, their voices merging into a dull roar that I could barely process. Instead, all I could hear was the echo of criticism from my childhood, the harsh judgments that still haunted my thoughts. It felt as though I were 6 years old again, shrinking beneath the disdainful gaze of my mother, who swiftly dismissed my modest achievements while praising my older brother's successes. "Look at how well he does," she would often say, making me feel like I was living in the shadows of his brilliance. When my manager finally called on me to present my ideas, I froze, the weight of all those past experiences flooding back in a wave of anxiety. Why do I still let their shadows define me? The question struck me like lightning, illuminating something deep within. It wasn't just a fleeting reaction. It was a long-standing pattern, woven into my identity. I could sense my hands growing clammy, my voice trembling as I ventured to express ideas I had worked so hard to refine. Each word felt like it was sinking in the silence that enveloped the room. After fumbling through my presentation, I hastily gathered my papers, desperate to escape the suffocating grip of self-doubt that had begun to tighten around me. My colleagues' faces morphed into reminders of my worth, which felt perpetually out of reach. Memories surfaced of a little girl, small and hopeful, who sat alone on the stairs, longing for even a trace of her parents' approval, feeling invisible against the backdrop of her brother's accolades. As I stepped outside to breathe in the fresh air, I could almost feel the overwhelming weight shift slightly. For the first time, in the midst of my agony, I sensed a flicker of awareness, a hint of curiosity beginning to grow within me. Perhaps this struggle illuminated the path to understanding my internal triggers and unearthing what lay beneath my emotional scars. I clutched my notebook, filled with reflections from the recent workshop on shadow work, and my heart beat faster. What if acknowledging these wounds would eventually lead to healing? What if my past didn't have to dictate my future? I stood there, breathing deeply, preparing for an emotional upheaval that lay ahead, knowing that to confront my past, I must first acknowledge its constraints. This was merely the first step, but it was essential. Today, the echo of my wound, which had long choked me, was transforming into a whisper of hope. I was ready to reclaim my narrative and begin the journey toward liberation. The weight of my past pressed down on my chest as I sat on my bed that evening, the familiar shadows creeping in. The stillness of the night allowed my thoughts to swirl, dragging me back to moments that had long been buried. A cacophony of memories bubbled to the surface, each one a reminder of my childhood, of the family gatherings where I felt perpetually invisible. I could see it so clearly. My family gathered around the dinner table, the flickering candles casting playful shadows, but the warmth they were meant to evoke was overshadowed by an icy distance. My parents often praised my brother, showering him with compliments and accolades that felt like daggers to my already wounded heart. "He's done it again, first in his class," they would exclaim, their eyes sparkling with pride, while I sat there just an echo in the background. My heart clenched as I recalled the way my mother's eyes lit up for him, those brilliant glances never quite falling on me unless it was to remind me of what I hadn't achieved. I am not enough. That haunting belief clamored for recognition in my mind as I flipped through pages of my journal, filled with jotted thoughts and reflections. It was my sanctuary, yet it was filled with declarations of unworthiness. Notes that read, "I must be perfect to be loved," and "my worth is measured by others' success," echoed painfully inside my head. I had crafted these beliefs with the care of an artist, each stroke a painful reminder of my inadequacy. In moments of vulnerability, I would find myself in front of the mirror, looking deep into my own eyes, desperately searching for some sign of worthiness. "Why can't you be like him?" I'd whisper to my reflection, subconsciously echoing the words of my mother. My younger self, with the hopeful glint in her eyes, would shout back. How could she know that, despite her fierce spirit, her efforts to shine would forever feel eclipsed by the relentless glow of her brother? Suddenly, a wave of warmth washed over me as I remembered a moment during a family outing. My parents had taken us to a park, and I had, for once, shown them my artistic talents. I had painted a vibrant picture of our family holding hands under the sun. They were busy marveling at my brother's impressive soccer skills, but my heart fluttered when I heard my mother comment, "What a lovely drawing, Sophia." For that brief instance, I felt seen and valued. But before I knew it, her praise was overshadowed by my brother's victories in sport, confetti falling as his team won a trophy. Despite that fleeting positivity, those moments were always disrupted. My creative soul remained little more than a longing, yearning for approval, yet often feeling neglected. As I reflected, I realized how my childhood had carved deep grooves into my sense of self-worth. The emotional labor I had undertaken to gain attention was relentless, and every slight had shaped the foundation of my beliefs about love and acceptance. Coping mechanisms developed over the years began to unravel in front of me. The perfectionism, the fear of vulnerability, and the anger I scarcely acknowledged had all traced back to those formative years spent in the shadows. In therapy sessions and workshops, I had often discussed the concept of the wounded inner child, but until now, I didn't recognize it was a part of me that needed nurturing, an aspect I had ignored, hoping my adult self could simply push through. I took a deep breath, realization settling over me like a warm blanket. This little girl inside me needed compassion, not criticism. As my ailing heart began to mend, I felt a sense of connection to her. I envisioned her small hands, clutching the paintbrush, and watched as she created her world through art. A spark ignited within me. Perhaps this was the breakthrough I needed, the acknowledgement that my wounds didn't simply define me. They were parts of my journey, shaping the unique perspective I had to offer the world. With newfound clarity, I began to commit to a practice that would lift the veil from my past. Each evening, I would sit with my journal and intentionally write letters to my younger self. I wrote words of love, forgiveness, and understanding, soft reminders that she was enough in her imperfect, beautiful way. "I see you, Sophia," I penned one night, dim light flickering softly. "You are deserving of love, just as you are. Your creativity matters. You matter." With each letter, I felt parts of me intertwining, bridging the gap between the child who felt unseen and the adult yearning to become whole. This journey toward acceptance wouldn't erase the past, but rather serve to illuminate the path toward healing. Slowly, the heavy chains of my limiting beliefs began to rattle loose, softening as I reached deeper into my own heart. In that moment of reflection, I understood that true healing wouldn't arrive without recognizing the roots of my pain. And as painful as those roots may be, they also represented the unique beauty of my story, one in which I could finally begin to rewrite the narrative from the shadows into a vibrant extension of light and love. The week after my reflections, I attended a workshop that promised to illuminate my journey. The flyer boldly proclaimed, "Embrace your shadows. Discover the power of Jungian concepts." Entering the softly lit room, filled with the inviting scents of essential oils and gentle ambient music, I felt both anticipation and anxiety tangled together in my chest. This was my chance to delve into the psychology that lay beneath my struggles, to understand the shadows that had shadowed my life. The facilitator, Clara, radiated warmth as she welcomed us and began to discuss the concept of the shadow, the hidden, often uncomfortable aspects of ourselves that we suppress. To fully embody ourselves, we must recognize our shadows, she emphasized with a resolute gentleness. Only then can we uncover and integrate our true potential. Her words struck a chord deep within me, echoing the unspoken narratives buried in my past. As I listened, vivid memories from my childhood surfaced unbidden. I recalled family gatherings where my brother dazzled everyone with his achievements, while I felt the sting of neglect. My parents' voices rang out in celebration of his every success, reinforcing the belief that my existence was overshadowed by his greatness. I could feel the familiar pang of sadness and envy twist in my stomach, accompanied by a sense of longing for acknowledgement, longing for the love that always seemed reserved for him. Suddenly, a revelation washed over me. Perhaps the resentment I felt wasn't just an emotional flaw, but rather a signal from my shadow, a deep-rooted response to years of unrecognized pain. It urged me to explore these suppressed emotions and embrace them rather than dismissing them as weaknesses. My anger, previously shunned to the corners of my mind, began to present itself as an important voice I could no longer ignore. We transitioned into an interactive exercise where Clara encouraged participants to connect with our shadows through written dialogue. With pen trembling, I began to expose my thoughts. Why do I feel this relentless need for approval? I penned, seeking answers from that part of me planted in shadows. Why do I sabotage my own happiness, choosing self-doubt over confidence? In the flow of writing, buried emotions began to surface in raw, unfiltered honesty. The words flowed freely, bursting forth with the urgency of a dam breaking. I feel angry, because I was never allowed to be fully myself, because I was always competing, always striving, I realized, my heart pounding. This acknowledgement was liberating. The air felt electric around me. During a guided visualization, Clara invited us to imagine walking into a cave, a metaphor for our shadows. I closed my eyes and envisioned stepping into the darkness, feeling the coolness around me as I ventured deeper. As my surroundings faded into the shadows, images began to materialize. Figures emerged, each representing parts of myself I had long denied. I recognized the hopeful artist yearning for expression, the competitive student desperately seeking validation, and the frustrated daughter grappling with the burden of expectations. Each figure pulsated with vibrant energy, demanding recognition. As I navigated this internal landscape, the darkness began to transform. I felt the flicker of light emanating from within the cave. To embrace my shadow was to finally claim my light, I whispered, a profound sense of empowerment swelling in my heart. Acknowledging my pain transformed it from a burdensome weight into a meaningful part of my journey. When it came time to share our insights with the group, I felt vulnerable yet supported. Clara encouraged me, and I took a deep breath before speaking about my experience. For the first time, I felt the weight of my voice being validated. I am learning to recognize the pieces of myself I've neglected, the parts that carry both hurt and strength, I shared, and I was met with nods of understanding from the group. The emotional connection in that moment felt like an embrace, lifting me further from isolation. As the workshop drew to a close, we engaged in a collective meditation to honor our shadows. I felt a rising sense of freedom flowing through me, washing over the remnants of anxiety that had accompanied me into the space. The flicker of hope, once a distant glimmer, now resonated through me, illuminating the path toward integrating all aspects of myself. I felt the solid grounding of purpose beneath my feet, eager to explore the complexity of my identity, weaving together the threads of struggle and triumph. Stepping outside after the workshop, I inhaled deeply, the crisp air filling my lungs with new energy. A lightness had taken root in my chest, dissolving the heaviness of unexamined emotions. I realized that the journey to understand my past and integrate these shadows would not be straightforward. Still, I was now equipped with a deeper understanding of the beauty hidden within my complexities. The path ahead was a testament to my resilience, and I felt invigorated, ready to embrace all that I had uncovered with courage. In the weeks after the workshop, I felt an urge to plunge deeper into the psychological terrain I had begun to explore. Each night, I would retreat to my journal, pouring my thoughts onto the pages, seeking to unravel my feelings of fear, anger, and hope. I understood that I was on the brink of transformation, but navigating this internal journey felt daunting, like a traveler staring up at a mountain without a clear path to the summit. One Saturday morning, I decided to make that journey a reality. Armed with my journal, a steaming cup of herbal tea, and an unwavering commitment to understanding the complexities of my mind, I set up a tranquil space in my living room, lit a candle to create an inviting atmosphere, and took a moment to breathe deeply, allowing the calming aromas to settle over me like a warm blanket. Opening my journal, I began with a stream of consciousness exercise. What do I truly feel about my family? I inquired, knowing that this question would lead me further down the paths I'd avoided. Thoughts flowed rapidly as I considered my mother's expectations and my father's emotional distance, both of which had contributed to the narrative of inadequacy that plagued me. I feel suffocated by their judgments, I wrote, my hand quaking with the weight of truth. I've been the good daughter, desperately searching for approval but always feeling insufficient. In that moment, I realized I had borne the strain of their expectations like a heavy cloak, suffocating rather than empowering. Days turned into weeks as I continued my exploration. Through thoughtful reflection and self-inquiry, I began to identify the recurring patterns and complexes that had formed over my life. The facets of my identity began to emerge more clearly: the perfectionist, the approval seeker, and the invisible child. I found myself grappling not just with the emotional aspects of these identities, but with their roles in shaping my day-to-day existence. I could see how the perfectionist dominated my thoughts, constantly critiquing every small move I made, while the approval seeker was cowering, constantly searching for validation from external sources. The invisible child sat silently in the corners of my mind, yearning to be recognized. The realization that I had been operating within this fragmented system, where each part was pulling me in different directions, hit me hard. One powerful evening, I decided it was time to confront these complexes directly. I created a vision board, collecting images and quotes that represented each aspect of my identity. I found photographs of girls with paintbrushes, inspirational words about self-acceptance, and images of women who embraced their authenticity. As I glued each piece onto the board, I felt a surge of determination and solidarity. These were not merely traits to be subdued, they were integral to my journey toward wholeness. With my vision board proudly displayed, I began meditating on each complex individually, inviting them into my consciousness. Sitting across from the perfectionist, I asked, "What do you want from me?" Tears filled my eyes as she replied, "I want you to see how much you can accomplish. I believe in your potential." Her response stirred something within me, a mix of pride and fear. Then I faced the approval seeker, who looked fragile and scared. "Why do you need others to validate you?" I questioned gently. "Because I don't feel worthy on my own," she admitted, evoking guilt and compassion in me. This confrontation revealed how I had allowed her desires to dictate my self-worth for years, despite my deep longing for independence. Lastly, I turned to the invisible child, who sat curled up with her knees drawn to her chest. "What do you need to feel seen?" I asked tenderly. "I want you to remember me," she whispered, longing evident in her voice. "I want to paint and express myself without fear." Determined to honor her spirit, I promised to foster her creativity and give her the attention she deserved. Conversations with these facets of myself transformed the internal conflicts that had become my norm. By embracing each piece of my identity, I could finally begin to weave together the tangled threads of my existence. No longer were they burdens dragging me down, they became the pillars upon which I would build a more authentic version of myself. As time went on, I experienced profound shifts in my relationships with others. Conversations with friends deepened as I started to let my walls down, sharing my vulnerabilities and fears. Feeling accepted and supported, I discovered the power of connecting with others through honesty rather than through a facade of perfection. One evening, as I sat around a table with friends, I spoke candidly about my journey, my struggles to embrace my shadows while navigating familial expectations. Their responses were filled with understanding and empathy, creating an atmosphere of safety where I could be my true self. Those moments of vulnerability became healing, fusing our connection with authenticity. Reflecting on this ongoing journey, I understood that what I was undertaking was far more than self-discovery. It was a profound process of transformation. The fragments of my past were no longer chains binding me. They were threads woven intricately into my life's fabric, each one carrying the potential of beauty, wisdom, and resilience. Through this exploration, the mantra, "To embrace my shadow was to finally claim my light," became more than just words. It became my guiding principle. Acknowledging my hurt and pain wasn't a sign of weakness. It was an empowering pathway toward self-acceptance. The realization dawned that this journey was just beginning, and I stood on the threshold of uncovering a richer, more vibrant identity woven from every piece of my history. With every exploration and each confrontation of my inner complexes, I felt a step closer to the Sophia I was always meant to be. a life lived fully, authentically, and unabashedly. As the weeks flowed into months, my deepening journey of self-discovery began to intertwine with the threads of daily life. I could feel myself getting stronger, not just emotionally, but also in my relationships with others. Each step I took seemed to carve out a path uniquely shaped by my experiences. Yet, while I felt a profound change dawning on me, I was also aware of the weight that lay ahead, a weight that whispered of vulnerability. My next test came unexpectedly, during a family gathering. My parents had invited everyone over to celebrate my brother's recent promotion, a highlight in a career that had always outshone mine. And as the day approached, I felt a knot twist tightly in my stomach. These events had historically been fertile ground for comparison and unspoken tension. In the past, I would have slipped into the role of the supportive daughter, submerging my own feelings. But this time, I felt different. Determined to face my fears, I prepared for the evening. Armed with grounding exercises and affirmations, I told myself, "You are not defined by their accomplishments. Your journey is valid." I practiced breathing techniques, visualizing myself moving confidently into the evening, authentically embodying the progress I had made. That night, the atmosphere crackled with anticipation as family members greeted one another with animated energy. I took a deep breath, allowing the familiarity to settle over me, but recognizing the shifting terrain within. My mother, glowing in her excitement, enveloped me in a warm hug. "Sophia, you're here. We're so proud of your brother." My heart tightened at her words, but I anchored myself. I reminded myself of my own achievements in social work, small moments of triumph with my clients that had brought me immense joy. As conversations swirled around me, I consciously engaged with family members, resisting the urge to slip back into the shadows. My brother spoke highly of his accomplishments, and instead of feeling overshadowed, I harnessed courage. I knew it was crucial to lift my voice above the noise of unspoken family dynamics. "Can I share something with everyone?" I said, allowing my vulnerability to break through the surface. Their turning gazes felt heavy, but I pressed on. "I've been taking time for myself lately. I'm learning to embrace my imperfections and prioritizing my own journey." With every word, I felt lighter, relentlessly reminding myself that my worth wasn't contingent upon someone else's achievements. The room fell silent. I could feel the weight of attention upon me, a juxtaposition of fear and freedom intertwining. But my heart raced with an unfamiliar exhilaration. My mother, after a moment of surprise, smiled. "That's wonderful, Sophia. I'm so proud of you." The relief that washed over me was profound. I hadn't expected that reaction. As the evening continued, I became increasingly aware of how my stance shifted within my family dynamics. Discussions flowed first from accolades to more genuine reflections. I felt empowered, sharing laughter and moments of connection, as I refused to be defined by my past role as the lesser sibling. I realized I was allowing light to flood the spaces that had once been shadowed by fear. In the days that followed, a dawning realization arose. I needed to reclaim my narrative fully, establishing boundaries with my family that prioritized my emotional well-being became essential. I understood that being authentic didn't mean cutting ties, but rather reshaping them within the context of love and respect. With thoughtful contemplation, I decided to write a letter to my family, a missive that would lay bare my journey, my struggles, and the lessons I'd learned. I wanted them to understand the depth of my past experiences and this newfound approach to our relationship. "I love you all, but there are things I need you to know," I began, pouring my heart into the words. As I articulated my feelings, I felt a sense of liberation. I explained how their expectations had exerted pressure on me and how vital it was for me to establish healthy boundaries. I need to be seen and appreciated for who I am, not just as the sister of someone successful. Closing the letter, I acknowledged my feelings thoughtfully, conveying both my love and my need for understanding. After sending the letter, I felt a mix of excitement and apprehension. While waiting for a response, I leaned into life with renewed strength. I practiced self-care through creative outlets. Painting and writing transformed into avenues of expression, where the Sophia I was becoming could truly come to life. Responses came filtering in, some through heartfelt texts, others via warm phone calls. My mother was the first to reach out, her voice trembling with emotion. "Sophia, thank you for your honesty. I didn't realize how much stress you've been feeling. I'm so sorry if my love ever felt conditional." I was taken aback, her words wrapping around me with an unexpected warmth. My brother followed suit, expressing pride in my courage for sharing my feelings. "You're so much more than someone's little sister. You're amazing in your own right." Empathy surged through me, melting away the chains of expectation I had carried for so long. It was liberating, feeling the validation lift me from the shadows, turning emotions into insight rather than fear. These moments became powerful turning points, renouncing the narratives that had held me captive for years. I realized that my letters of honesty and vulnerability were not just for others' understanding, but also vital for my healing. They were steps toward creating a relationship defined by love and authenticity rather than unexamined emotions lingering in the corners. With newfound clarity, I stepped into this vibrant chapter of life, a life lived more fully and authentically than I had ever dared. I knew the journey would continue to unfold, each day offering layers of understanding, healing, and growth. I was ready to embrace the transformative power of embracing my shadows. Every encounter, every honest dialogue about identity, pushed me closer to the light I longed to acknowledge. Healing was not a destination. It was a journey, a beautiful one, filled with the complexities that made me who I was meant to be. With each new day, I felt a surge of freedom and responsibility as I embraced the changes that had begun to redefine my life. No longer tethered to the expectations that had once guided my actions, I started to explore what authenticity truly meant for me. Healing was evolving from an internal journey into a manifestation of my choices and experiences. My first significant step was to advocate for myself at work. Previous meetings had often left me hesitant, stifling my ideas in fear of judgment. But now, with a newfound sense of worth, I was resolved to allow my voice to be heard. One sunny afternoon, in a team brainstorming session, I decided to step forward and share the insights I had cultivated. My heart raced as I articulated my thoughts, battling the inner critic that murmured doubts. But as I spoke, I noticed supportive nods from colleagues and the encouragement radiating from my supervisor. When I finished, the applause was both surprising and affirming. In that moment, I felt the shackles of insecurity dissolve, replaced by an exhilarating sense of empowerment. This was not just about voicing ideas. It was about contributing genuinely to the team and understanding that my perspective, shaped by my struggles and triumphs, added value. At home, I devoted time to creative outlets that nourished my spirit. Painting became my sanctuary, a place where emotions transformed into colors and forms on the canvas. I spent hours immersed in the vibrant hues, allowing each stroke to reflect my journey from shadow to light. As I painted, I found a voice for the complexity of my experiences. I began sharing my artwork online, inviting connections with a community that thrived on creativity and vulnerability. Family dynamics continued to shift in this new light. My mother, noticing my changes, began reaching out more frequently. "I want to understand your journey," she said during one call, her sincerity echoing through the line. I could feel her effort to engage meaningfully, bridging the gap that had long existed between us. Her willingness to learn about my growth inspired me, making me realize how our relationship could evolve. One significant moment arrived when I invited my parents to a local gallery opening, a showcase of emerging artists where I was exhibiting my own work. As the evening unfolded, nerves bubbled within me at the prospect of sharing my art. I knew it was not just a display of my creations, but an opportunity to connect with my parents on a deeper level. When they arrived, my heart raced. My mother's eyes widened as she encountered my piece, a vibrant portrayal of light breaking through darkness. "Sophia, this is beautiful," she breathed, her voice a mix of astonishment and pride. "I didn't know this was what you were feeling." In that moment, the weight of our past interactions faded, and we began to share an understanding I hadn't anticipated. "I want you to see me," I admitted. "This is my story. Every piece of it." The dialogue that followed over dinner was heartfelt and earnest. My parents opened up about their perceptions and struggles, and I felt a wave of catharsis wash over us. We began to explore each other's experiences empathetically, a far cry from the misunderstandings that had previously defined our conversations. During the days that followed, I reflected on a revelation that had taken root. The act of reclaiming my narrative was vital for true authenticity. I understood the importance of setting emotional boundaries while nurturing relationships. Speaking my truth had enabled me to reshape the dynamics within my family, creating space for love and understanding. Empowered by this healing process, I sensed a lingering desire to extend this freedom beyond myself and engage with the community. Volunteering had always been a cherished passion, but the urgency to serve resurged within me. I reached out to local organizations eager to work with young individuals grappling with their own shadows, much like I had done in the past. One Saturday, I found myself leading a workshop for teenagers wrestling with issues of identity and self-worth. I felt a rush of nervousness mixed with excitement as I prepared to share my story. "Your journeys may feel heavy," I began, "but they can lead to light. Learning to embrace what you feel can transform your struggles into strengths." The wise thigh response was immediate. The youths opened up, sharing their fears and aspirations, forming an atmosphere of camaraderie. I guided them through journaling exercises and creative activities, encouraging self-expression. Their willingness to engage stirred old memories within me, reminding me of my younger self, lost, yet longing for acceptance. Each interaction was a reminder that we were all navigating the complexities of life together, and in this solidarity, we found strength. Guiding. These young minds felt like another profound step on my healing journey. In teaching them to embrace vulnerability, I was reaffirming my own experiences. The lessons I had learned flowed back to me, reinforcing my purpose. As I continued to reflect on my path, it became evident that embracing my authentic self was only the beginning. I would undoubtedly encounter challenges, but they would no longer deter me. They would propel me forward. Healing was an active process, a commitment to honoring my truths and allowing space for growth. The journey ahead was brimming with possibilities. Each moment spent in honesty illuminated the deeper truths I had long sought to acknowledge. I was learning to navigate life with an open heart and a courageous spirit. The time had come to embrace the transformative power of my shadows, allowing them to guide me toward a more integrated existence. Healing was not merely a destination. It was a vibrant journey, a beautiful intertwining of every piece of my past, a celebration of the complexities that shaped who I had become. As I painted my future with the colors of self-acceptance, creativity, and community, I knew I was becoming the Sophia I had always aspired to be. I was ready to walk confidently into the light of my own story. As the months blended into seasons, I found myself flourishing in ways I had never imagined. The journey of self-discovery had transformed from an individual quest into a rich tapestry, woven with the connections I had fostered. I embraced my newfound identity with open arms, realizing that healing was not a solitary path, but a legacy shared with those around me. My work with the youth organization blossomed, engaging with young people who were navigating their own complex landscapes. Each interaction felt purposeful, as I guided them through creative exercises and discussions that encouraged vulnerability. Witnessing their transformations reminded me of my younger self, lost, yet desperately seeking acceptance and understanding. The energy in the room crackled with possibility as they opened up about their fears and dreams. I felt a profound sense of solidarity in these moments, recognizing that we were all navigating life's complexities together. Their willingness to share and explore resonated with my own journey. As I taught them to embrace their struggles, I was reaffirming my own healing, solidifying my purpose of creating a safe space for open dialogue and self-expression. At home, my relationship with my family continued to evolve. Conversations shifted from mundane exchanges to deep discussions about feelings, struggles, and aspirations. One evening, my father took a brave step and expressed his regrets about not being more present in our lives. "I wish I had understood sooner," he said, prompting a wave of deep conversation and healing. As we shared our thoughts, I felt the old dynamics of unspoken expectations begin to dissolve. My brother also joined the discussion, sharing his insights on how our upbringing had influenced us both. Yet we were now carving our own paths. It was liberating to witness our family redefine our relationships, founded on love and understanding rather than competition or comparison. I continued to express myself through my art, showcasing my work at local galleries. Painting turned into a therapeutic outlet where I could release emotions and translate them into visual narratives. Each piece reflected the journey I had undertaken and the insights I had gained. I began sharing my art online, connecting with a wider audience that resonated with my message of healing and resilience. This act of sharing became a celebration of my progress and a way to lift others as they navigated their paths. As I engaged with my community, the realization dawned on me that my journey was not just about personal healing, it was about creating a ripple effect. Sharing my story and supporting others became intertwined, reinforcing my belief that healing could be collectively transformative. I hosted workshops where I challenged participants to explore their identities, encouraging them to create their own vision boards. The energy in the room was palpable as they excitedly cut, pasted, and shared their dreams. I saw their eyes light up with possibilities. It was a reminder that we were all capable of growth and healing. Reflecting on this beautiful journey, I understood that embracing my authentic self was merely the beginning. Challenges were inevitable, but they no longer intimidated me. Instead, they became opportunities for growth. I was learning to navigate life with an open heart, to embrace vulnerability, and to celebrate every facet of who I am. Healing, I realized, was not merely a destination, but a vibrant journey, a blend of every piece of my past, leading to the woman I had become. With each brushstroke of paint and every meaningful conversation, I was shaping my legacy, creating a narrative that honored my struggles while uplifting others. As I stood before my vision board, adorned with messages of self-acceptance and creativity, I felt a sense of pride swell within me. I had become Sophia, a woman thriving in her truth, not defined by the shadows of her past, but empowered by them. I was ready to walk boldly into the light, confident in my story and eager to embrace all that lay ahead. The future was bright, filled with the promise of connection, growth, and unyielding authenticity.